One evening in 1993, a young housekeeper failed to show up at the wealthy household she worked at. Her employers assumed she'd found another job or left. She was never heard from again. Then 5 years later, construction workers breaking ground on a hiking trail uncovered evidence so gruesome the authorities were immediately called. Miguel Santos felt the excavator's teeth catch something solid beneath the earth. The morning sun cast long shadows across Griffith Park as he shut off the engine and climbed down from the cab. His crew was breaking ground for a new hiking trail near the observatory, and after 20 years running heavy machinery, he knew the difference between rock and entirely. He grabbed a shovel from the truck and started digging where the bucket had stopped. The soil came away easily until his blade struck something white and smooth. Miguel dropped to his knees and brushed dirt away with his hands. A human skull stared back at him. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, scrambling backward. He pulled out his cell phone with trembling fingers and dialed 911. 2 hours later, the area buzzed with activity. Yellow tape cordoned off a 20 FT radius around the excavation site. Crime scene technicians moved methodically through the dirt, photographing and cataloging every fragment they uncovered. Detective Ana Rivas ducked under the tape and approached the burial site. She wore dark slacks and a leather jacket, her black hair pulled back in a ponytail that revealed the silver earrings her daughter had given her last Christmas. The remains lay partially exposed in the shallow grave, wrapped in deteriorating plastic sheeting that had once been clear, but now appeared gray and brittle. "What do we have?" she asked Officer Martinez, who had been first on scene. "Construction worker found them about 7 this morning. Looks like they've been here a while." Martinez pointed to the bones. "Coroner's preliminary says female, probably young adult." Anna knelt beside the remains, careful not to disturb the evidence markers. The location bothered her. This spot sat at least half a mile from any road or parking area, hidden behind dense brush and mature oak trees. Someone had chosen this place deliberately. Dr. Patricia Kim, the forensic anthropologist, approached carrying a metal case. Female, approximately 20 to 30 years old based on bone development. She's been here at least 4 years, possibly 5 or 6. The plastic helped preserve some soft tissue, but most is decomposed. Dr. Kim pointed to the skull. "Blunt force trauma to the occipital region. This woman was murdered. Based on bone structure and pelvic measurements, Hispanic female, mid-20s height, approximately 5'4" in time of death. Based on decomposition and the condition of the clothing fragments, I'd estimate 5 years," Anna calculated in her head. 5 years ago, whoever had done this thought they had buried their secret deep enough that it would never surface. There's something else. Dr. Kim pointed to the victim's hands. There's dried material under several fingernails. Could be blood, could be skin cells. If she fought back, we might be able to get DNA from her attacker. Anna felt the first spark of hope she'd had since arriving at the scene. DNA evidence could break this case wide open, assuming they could find a suspect to compare it against. "Yeah? How long before you can process the samples?" "Give me 48 hours for preliminary results. Full analysis will take longer." Anna studied the bones, noting how carefully they had been wrapped. "Any personal effects?" "2 items." Dr. Kim led her to an evidence table where technicians had laid out their discoveries. Bus pass from 1993, too deteriorated to read completely. And then she held up a plastic evidence bag containing a tarnished silver locket. Through the clear material, Anna could make out an engraving on the front. "MR.DuckTT." Anna walked the perimeter of the crime scene, studying the terrain. The burial site sat in a natural depression surrounded by heavy brush. No hiking trails came within 200 yards. Whoever did this knew the area well. She told Martinez. This was planned. She looked back toward the city spread out below them. Downtown Los Angeles shimmered in the distance, its glass towers reflecting the morning sun. Somewhere down there, people were going about their normal lives, unaware that a young woman had been lying forgotten in these hills for years. Anna thought about all the missing persons cases that crossed her desk. How many were like this one? People who disappeared without anyone filing a report. Undocumented workers, runaways, those living on the margins of society. People whose absences went unnoticed by anyone who might call the police. Anna pushed through the heavy glass doors of the LAPD headquarters building. The morning's crime scene photos were already uploaded to the department database, but she needed to search for any existing case files before moving forward. The Criminal Investigation Division buzzed with its usual activity. Anna settled at her desk and logged into the missing persons database, entering Marbel-Duarte in the search field. No results found. She tried variations: Maria Duarte, Mayor Duarte, and even just Duarte with a 1993 date range. Each search came back empty. She expanded the parameters to include all missing persons reports filed between 1992 and 1995 involving Latina females in their 20s. Dozens of cases populated her screen, but none matched their victim. Anna scrolled through photograph after photograph of young women who had disappeared without a trace. Some cases had been closed when the women returned home. Others remained open with no new leads in years. Detective Ray Morrison leaned over her shoulder, coffee mug in hand. New case: body found in Griffith Park this morning. Young Latina been dead about 5 years. Anna turned the monitor so he could see the search results. Problem is, nobody ever reported her missing. Ray frowned. Nobody. Family, friends, employer. That's what I need to figure out. Anna closed the database and opened a new browser window. All I have is a name on a locket. Anna spent the next 3 hours working through city records. The bus pass fragment showed partial text Metro and what looked like 1993. An expired bus pass wouldn't help identify the victim, but it might provide clues about where she lived or worked. She called the Metro Transit Authority and spoke to a record supervisor named Janet Phillips. After explaining the nature of her investigation, Janet agreed to search their employee databases for anyone named Marbel-Duarte who had worked for the company in the early 1990s. I'm not finding any employees with that name, Janet said, but let me check something else. We maintain emergency contact information for pass holders who register their cards. It's a long shot for something that old, but worth a try. Anna waited while Janet searched older archived files. Outside her office window, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking garage where she had left her unmarked Crown Victoria. Wait, I found something, Janet said. We have a pass registered to Marbel-Duarte in 1993. Address shows Highland Park. Emergency contact listed as Carmen Duarte. Same address. Anna grabbed a pen and wrote down the information. The Highland Park address led to a small apartment building on Avenue 50, painted pale yellow with iron security bars on the first floor windows. Anna parked across the street and studied the neighborhood. Small houses and apartment complexes lined both sides of the street, many with well-tended gardens and children's toys scattered in the yards. She approached the building and checked the mailboxes in the front entry. Anna rang the building manager's bell. An elderly man answered the door wearing a stained undershirt and holding a can of Coca-Cola. You selling something? Anna showed her badge. LAPD. I'm looking for information about a former tenant, Marbel-Duarte. She lived here in 1993. The man's expression grew wary. Immigration. Homicide. Marbel is dead. I'm trying to notify her family. His hostility melted into concern. What happened? When did you last see her? Must have been late 1993. She shared apartment 2B with 2 other girls. One day she just disappeared. The other girl said she probably went back to Mexico or found work somewhere else. He shook his head sadly. A lot of people come and go around here. Never thought to call police. Anna pulled out a small notebook. Do you remember her roommates' names? One was Rosa something. The other girl I forget, but Rosa still lives in the neighborhood, works at the market on Figueroa. Anna found Rosa Hernandez stocking produce at a small grocery store 6 blocks from the old apartment building. When Anna showed her badge, Rosa's face went pale, but she relaxed slightly when Anna explained she was investigating Marbel's death, not immigration status. Marbel was my friend, Rosa said, setting down a box of tomatoes. Good girl, worked hard, sent money to her family. Did she ever mention being afraid of anyone having problems with a boyfriend or employer? No, nothing like that. She was happy those last few months, said she found a good job with a nice family in Bear. They paid her better than the hotel where she cleaned rooms before. She had a sister. Rosa continued. Karaman, younger girl, maybe 16 or 17. Then Marbel was working to put her through high school. Do you know how I can find Carmen? Rosa glanced around nervously, then lowered her voice. Last I heard she was working at a restaurant downtown place called El Centro near the Civic Center. But that was a few years ago. El Centro occupied a narrow storefront on Spring Street. Anna pushed through the front door and found herself in a small dining room filled with the smell of grilled meat and fresh tortillas. A woman in her early 20s approached carrying menus. "Table for one," the woman asked in accented English. Anna pulled out her badge instead of taking the menus. "I'm Detective Rivas, LAPD. Are you Carmen Duarte?" The woman froze, menus clutched against her chest. "What's wrong? What happened? Is there somewhere we can talk privately?" Carmen led Anna through the dining room to a small office behind the kitchen. She closed the door and turned around, fear evident in her dark eyes. "Is this about my sister?" Did something happen to Mbel? Anna had delivered death notifications hundreds of times during her career, but they never got easier. She gestured for Carmen to sit down in the single chair behind the desk. "Carmen, I'm sorry to have to tell you this. We found your sister's remains this morning in Griffith Park. She's been dead for approximately 5 years. Carmen stared at Anna for a long moment, as if her mind couldn't process the words. Then her face crumpled and she doubled over, sobbing with the kind of raw grief that comes from years of not knowing. "I knew something was wrong," Carmen said through her tears. "Mbel would never just disappear like that. She would never leave me." Anna waited for the initial wave of grief to pass before asking gentle questions. Carmen confirmed that Mbel had been 26 when she disappeared in October 1993. She had been working as a housekeeper for a wealthy family in Bear and seemed happier than ever. She was saving money to bring our mother from Mexico and to put me through school. Carmen explained that her new job paid really well, and the family was good to her. She even got to eat dinner with them sometimes. Did she ever mention the family's name? Carmen wiped her eyes with a tissue Anna had given her. She was careful about that, said they valued their privacy, but she did say the man was in real estate. Did Marble seem worried about anything in the weeks before she disappeared? No, that's just it. She was excited about the future for the first time since we came here. She even bought new clothes and was taking English classes at night. Carmen's voice broke again. She wanted to improve herself so she could get an even better position someday. Carmen walked to a small window that looked out on the busy street. The last time I talked to her was October 14th, 1993, a Thursday night. She called to say she'd be working late the next day because the family was having a dinner party. She sounded happy on the phone, said she might get a bonus for working extra hours. She was going to use the money to buy me school clothes. Carmen turned back to Anna, tears flowing again. She never came home. What did you do when she didn't return? I waited all weekend. On Monday, I went to her old job at the hotel, but they said she'd quit weeks earlier to work for this other family. I didn't know how to find her new employers. I was just 17 and scared of calling police because Carmen stopped herself. I understand, Anna finished. Carmen nodded. Rosa and the other girls said Mbel probably got deported or found work in another city. It happened to people all the time. I kept hoping she would call or send a letter, but nothing ever came. Anna studied Carmen's face, seeing 5 years of unresolved grief and guilt. Carmen, I need you to know that we're going to find who did this to Marble, but I need your help. Think carefully. Did she ever mention anything specific about the family she worked for? Their neighborhood, the type of house, anything that might help me identify them? Carmen was quiet for several minutes, staring out the window at the passing traffic. Finally, she turned back to Anna. There was one thing. She said they had a swimming pool shaped like a kidney, and she could see the Hollywood sign from the backyard. She thought that was the most beautiful thing in the world. Anna felt her pulse quicken. In a city like Los Angeles, those details might be enough to identify the exact house where Marble had worked and where she had died. Anna spent 3 hours that evening cross-referencing property records in Bear. She identified 12 possible addresses and finally identified the one she was looking for. Found you. The next morning, she drove into Bear. The address led her up a winding private road to an imposing Tudor-style mansion set behind wrought iron gates. Anna drove to the front gate and pressed the intercom button. A woman's voice answered after several rings. "Yes, this is Detective Anna Rivas, LAPD. I need to speak with Mr. and Mrs. Delqua about a former employee." A long pause. "What kind of employee? A housekeeper who worked here in 1993. It's regarding a homicide investigation." The gate buzzed open. Geneva Deca answered the front door herself, surprising Anna, who had expected to be greeted by current household staff. Detective Rivas, please come in. I must say this is quite unexpected. Is your husband available? I'd like to speak with both of you. Of course, Charles is in his study. I'll get him. Geneva excused herself, leaving Anna alone to study the room. One photo caught her attention. Geneva and Charles standing in formal attire, with a third person, a Latino man in a dark suit, who appeared to be in his 50s. He stood slightly behind the couple in the deferential pose of an employee, but his presence in a family photo seemed significant. Detective Rivas Geneva returned with a tall man who moved with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to being in charge. Charles Delacroix had silver hair and wore an expensive suit despite being at home on a Friday afternoon. Thank you for seeing me, Anna said, accepting Charles's firm handshake. I'm investigating the death of a young woman named MR.DuckTT. Our records indicate she worked here as a housekeeper in 1993. Both Charles and Geneva exchanged glances before Geneva responded. Belle. Oh my goodness, what happened to her? She was murdered. We found her remains in Griffith Park yesterday. The shock on Geneva's face appeared genuine. She sank into one of the antique chairs and pressed a hand to her chest. That's terrible. She was such a sweet girl. Charles moved to stand behind his wife's chair, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. Detective, I'm not sure how much help we can be. That was 5 years ago, and we've had several housekeepers since then. I understand, but anything you can remember might be helpful. When did Belle last work here? Geneva looked up at her husband. It was fall of 1993, wasn't it? She simply stopped coming to work one day. We assumed she'd found another position or had immigration issues. Did you report her absence to any agency? We didn't use an agency, Charles said. Belle came recommended by someone at the country club. When she didn't show up, we just assumed she'd moved on. It happens frequently with domestic help. Anna noted the casual way Charles dismissed Marble's disappearance. Can you tell me about her work performance? Any problems or conflicts? None at all, Geneva said quickly. She was wonderful, hard-working, punctual, trustworthy. I actually grew quite fond of her. Geneva's voice caught slightly. She reminded me of my grandmother's housekeeper when I was a child. Anna turned her attention to Charles, who had moved to the window and stood looking out at the garden. Mr. Delacroix, did you interact much with Belle? Charles turned around, and Anna noticed sweat beading on his forehead, despite the cool temperature in the room. Not really. I typically left domestic arrangements to my wife, but you would have seen her regularly since she worked here several days a week. Yes, of course. She seemed like a nice young woman. Charles loosened his tie slightly. Detective, is there some reason you're focusing on our household? Surely someone in her position would have interacted with many people. The defensiveness in Charles's tone set off warning bells for Anna. In her experience, innocent people usually wanted to help police investigations, not deflect them. I'm just trying to build a timeline of Marble's last known activities. Can you remember the specific date she last worked here? October 15th, Charles said suddenly, then seemed to regret the specificity. I think it was around then, a Friday. Anna made a note. You seem certain about that date, Mr. Delacroix. It stood out because we were having a dinner party that weekend, and Geneva was upset that Marble didn't show up to help with preparations. Geneva nodded. That's right. I had to scramble to get everything ready without her help. Anna continued pressing Charles with questions about his interactions with Marble. His answers became increasingly vague and evasive. Sweat stains appeared under the arms of his expensive shirt, and he kept glancing toward the door as if planning an escape route. Finally, Anna decided to take a more direct approach. Mr. Della, I need to ask you about the nature of your relationship with Maribel Dorda. I don't understand what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. Charles opened his mouth to deny it, but then seemed to deflate. He walked to the opposite end of the room and stared at another family photograph for a long moment. Charles. Geneva's voice carried a note of warning. Charles turned around to face both women, his face flushed with shame and fear. I need to tell you the truth. Yes, I had a personal relationship with Mirabelle. We were involved. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush the expensive furniture surrounding them. Geneva's face went white, then red, cycling through emotions too quickly for Anna to read. It began a few months after she started working here. She was beautiful and kind, and I was lonely. Geneva spent so much time with her charity work and social obligations. Geneva stood up slowly, her hands clenched into fists. How could you? In our home with someone we trusted, Geneva. I never meant for it to happen. Stop! Geneva's voice cut through his explanation. Just stop talking. Mrs. Delacroix, I know this is difficult, but I need to ask. Did you have any suspicion about your husband's relationship with Marble? Geneva remained standing, her whole body rigid with betrayal. None. I thought she was wonderful. I even gave her some of my old jewelry. The irony of the statement seemed to hit Geneva as she spoke. I can't believe this. Charles. What exactly happened on October 15th, 1993, Anna asked. Charles collapsed into a chair and put his head in his hand. We had planned to meet later that evening after the dinner party preparations were finished, but she never showed up at our usual place. Where was that small hotel in Beverly Hills? We'd been meeting there once or twice a week. Charles looked up at Geneva, whose face remained stone-like. When she didn't come, I assumed she'd gotten cold feet or decided to end things. I never imagined something bad had happened to her. Anna studied Charles's body language. His shame and fear seemed genuine, but something about his story didn't feel complete. Did you try to contact her when she didn't show up? I called the house, but Geneva said she hadn't come to work that day either. I figured she'd just decided to disappear. And you didn't think to look for her file, a missing persons report? Charles spread his hands helplessly. How could I would have had to explain our relationship, my marriage, my business, everything would have been destroyed. Anna turned back to Geneva, whose controlled anger was more frightening than if she'd been screaming and throwing things. Mrs. Delacroix, can you account for your whereabouts on the evening of October 15th? I was here preparing for our dinner party, just as I said. We had 12 guests coming the following evening. Geneva's voice remained steady, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the back of her chair. I spent the entire evening cooking and arranging flowers, wondering why my housekeeper had abandoned me at such an important time. The bitter irony in Geneva's voice made it clear she now understood why Marble hadn't shown up to help with the party preparations. As Anna prepared to wrap up the interview, she remembered the family photo she'd noticed earlier. She moved back to the piano and picked up the frame containing the image of Charles and Geneva with the unidentified Latino man. Can you tell me who this is? Anna asked, showing them the photo. Geneva glanced at the image without really looking at it. That's Felix, our driver. Well, former driver. He retired a couple of years ago. What's his full name? Felix Morales. Charles said he worked for us for about 8 years total. Oh, would Felix have known Marble? Oh, yes, Geneva answered. He drove her back and forth from the bus station when she worked late. Sometimes he helped with heavy cleaning tasks when we were preparing for events. Anna made a note of Felix's name and turned back to Charles. I need to know if you killed Marble Duarte. Charles jerked as if he'd been slapped. No, absolutely not. I cared about her. When she disappeared, I was devastated, but I couldn't do anything about it without destroying my life. I'll need you both to come to the station tomorrow to give formal statements, Anna said. As Anna drove away from the Delacroix mansion, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just witnessed the destruction of a marriage that had been built on secrets. The question was whether those secrets included murder. Do you think Charles is hiding something? Comment below. Will Anna find Marble's killer and solve the case? Give the video a like and keep watching to find out. Anna obtained warrants to examine Charles's bank records from October 1993. What she found raised new questions about his involvement in Maribel's death. Between October 16th and November 30th, 1993, Charles had made 5 large cash withdrawals totaling $15,000. When Anna confronted Charles about the cash withdrawals during his second interview, he became visibly uncomfortable. I withdrew that money for business purposes, he said, shifting in his chair across from Anna in the interview room. What kind of business purposes require $15,000 in cash? Sometimes in real estate, you need to pay contractors or suppliers who prefer cash payments. Anna pushed the bank statements across the table. Can you provide receipts or documentation for these business expenses? Charles stared at the papers for a long moment. It was 5 years ago. I don't maintain those records indefinitely. Mr. Delacroix, $15,000 in cash withdrawals right after your alleged mistress disappears looks very suspicious. Are you sure you don't want to reconsider your explanation? Charles rubbed his temples as if fighting a headache. I understand how it looks, detective, but I didn't kill Marble. Those cash withdrawals were for legitimate business purposes. Anna was reviewing her case files when Lieutenant Morrison called her into his office. Morrison had supervised the homicide division for 12 years and usually gave his detectives wide latitude in conducting investigations, but Anna could see concern in his expression. "Anna, I've been getting calls about your investigation into the Griffith Park remains. What kind of calls Charles Delcroix's attorney contacted the chief this morning? Apparently, Mr. Delcroix feels he's being harassed despite cooperating fully with your investigation." Anna felt her jaw tighten. "He's the primary suspect in a murder case. Of course I'm going to investigate him thoroughly. I understand that. But the Delcroix family has significant connections in the city. Charles sits on the boards of 3 major charities and has donated substantial money to political campaigns. We need to make sure our investigation is absolutely solid before we proceed further. Are you telling me to back off?" Morrison held up a hand. "I'm telling you to be careful. Make sure you have concrete evidence before making any arrests. The last thing this department needs is a wrongful arrest lawsuit against a prominent family." Anna understood the subtext. Politics and money could influence police investigations, especially when prominent citizens were involved. She would need irrefutable evidence to charge Charles Delcroix with murder. Anna sat in a red vinyl booth at Mel's Diner on Sunset Boulevard, picking at a turkey sandwich while reviewing her case notes from the past week. The investigation had stalled. No one reported conflicts or suspicious behavior beyond Charles's obvious discomfort during questioning. Her cell phone rang just as she reached for her coffee cup. "Detective Rivas, this is Dr. Kim at the lab." Anna straightened in her seat, pulling a pen from her jacket pocket. "What did you find?" "The material under the victim's fingernails tested positive for blood, but it's not the victim's blood. Unknown female. The DNA profile is complete, but it's not in any of our databases." Anna had expected a breakthrough during the call, but instead she was left with more questions. A female blood sample is Charles not the killer. Then Anna gathered her notes and left money for the check. She pushed through the diner's glass door and walked toward her unmarked Crown Victoria in the parking lot. Anna reached for her car keys and noticed a blue sedan parked 3 spaces away with its engine running. She wouldn't have thought anything of it except the driver wore sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low over his face despite sitting in shade. Anna pretended to search through her purse while observing the sedan peripherally. The driver held a newspaper but hadn't turned a page since she'd noticed him. When Anna moved toward her car, the newspaper shifted slightly as the driver tracked her movement. She had been a cop long enough to recognize surveillance when she saw it. Someone was watching her, and they weren't particularly good at hiding it. Anna opened her car door and slid behind the wheel, keeping her movements casual, while noting the sedan's license plate. She started her engine and pulled out of the parking space, slowly checking her mirrors to see if the sedan would follow. It did. She deliberately turned onto a dead-end street and parked quickly behind a large van that blocked sight lines from the main road. She grabbed her service weapon from its holster and waited to see what her tail would do when they realized they'd lost visual contact. The blue sedan crept down the residential street, its drivers scanning house numbers and parked cars. Anna watched through the van's windows as the sedan approached her position, the driver's head turning back and forth as he searched for her Crown Victoria. Anna emerged from behind the van with her weapon drawn but not raised. Police turn off the engine and step out of the vehicle. The driver abandoned his car and ran toward the fence, moving with surprising agility. He scaled the 6-foot barrier quickly and dropped into the backyard of a small house on the other side. Anna reached the fence seconds later but hesitated before climbing. Pursuing a suspect on foot through private property required backup and proper authorization. But as she stood there, calculating her options, she noticed something on the ground near the sedan's driver's side door. A white business card had fallen from the fleeing driver's pocket. Anna picked it up and read, "Morales Auto Repair, 20847 Whittier Belleville, East LA. She requested a crime scene team to process the abandoned sedan. The next day, she drove straight to the address on the business card, arriving at a small automotive repair shop wedged between a laundromat and a taco stand on Whittier Boulevard. The shop's roll-up doors were closed despite the early morning hour, when most repair businesses would still be operating. Anna parked across the street and observed the shop for several minutes. No lights were visible through the grimy windows, and no customers came or went. The place appeared completely deserted. She crossed the street and tried the shop's office door locked. But when she walked around to a side entrance, she found that door standing slightly ajar. Anna drew her weapon and pushed the side door open slowly. The interior of the shop was dark except for light filtering through dirty windows. The smell of motor oil and brake fluid hung heavy in the air, mixed with the metallic scent of welding equipment and rust. "Police? Is anyone in here?" No response. Anna stepped inside and allowed her eyes to adjust to the dim lighting. On a workbench near the office, Anna spotted a ceramic coffee mug with steam still rising from its surface. Someone had been here very recently. She moved toward the office, weapon ready. A sound from the rear of the building made her freeze. Anna moved toward the sound, staying close to the wall and keeping her weapon raised. The noise came from what appeared to be a storage area or a second work bay behind the main shop floor. "This is the police. Come out with your hands visible." The clanging stopped immediately, followed by the sound of a door slamming. Anna ran toward the rear of the building and found an emergency exit standing wide open, leading to an alley behind the shop. She emerged into bright sunlight and saw a man running toward the far end of the alley. Anna pursued on foot, radioing for backup units to surround the area. The alley connected to a maze of narrow streets and small businesses where a fleeing suspect could disappear easily. But the man she was chasing wasn't in good physical condition. He was breathing hard after only 2 blocks, and his pace slowed noticeably as Anna maintained steady pursuit. The chase ended when the fleeing man reached a dead-end street blocked by a concrete wall. He turned to face Anna, hands raised but still defiant. "There's nowhere else to run. Felix." Anna called out, approaching with her weapon drawn but pointed down. "I just want to talk to you." Felix pressed his back against the concrete wall, his hands raised, but his eyes darting left and right as if still looking for escape routes. He was older than Anna had expected, maybe 55, with graying hair and calloused hands that spoke of decades working with tools. "You're trespassing on my property," he said. "Your property ends at the fence. This is city property." Anna moved closer, keeping her weapon visible but not threatening. "Why did you run when I called your name? I don't have to talk to police without a lawyer." Anna studied Felix's face, noting the fear in his eyes and the way he kept glancing toward the fence as if contemplating another run. His behavior confirmed her suspicion that he knew exactly why she wanted to question him. "You're not under arrest, Felix. I just have some questions about your former employers, the Delacroix family." Felix's expression shifted at the mention of the Delacroix name. The fear in his eyes intensified, but it was joined by something else. Resignation, as if he had been expecting this conversation for years. "I don't work for them anymore," Felix said, "retired 2 years ago." "I know that, but you worked for them in 1993 when a young woman named MR.DuckTT was employed there as a housekeeper." Felix's hands trembled slightly, but he maintained eye contact with Anna. "I don't remember every person who worked in that house. Many people came and went." Anna holstered her weapon and pulled out her notebook, hoping a less threatening approach might encourage Felix to talk. MR.DuckTT disappeared on October 15, 1993. She stepped closer. "We found her remains. Felix, I can arrest you right now based on the physical evidence linking you to Marble's murder, or you can come with me voluntarily and we can discuss this like reasonable people." Felix pushed himself away from the wall and began walking back toward the fence. "I've been waiting 5 years for someone to ask me about that night. 5 years of looking over my shoulder, wondering when the cops would finally figure it out." 2 hours later, Felix Morales sat across from Anna in interview room 3 at the LAPD headquarters building. Anna opened Marble's case file and placed the crime scene photographs face down on the table between them. She wanted to build her case methodically, establishing Felix's connection to the victim before confronting him with the physical evidence. "Let's start with your employment history. You worked for Charles and Geneva Delacroix as their driver and handyman from 1991 to 1996. Correct?" "That's right. During that time, you would have interacted with other household employees, including housekeepers and cooks." Felix shifted in his chair. "Sometimes, mostly, I minded my own business." Anna flipped through her notes. "Do you remember a housekeeper named MR.DuckTT who worked there in 1993? "Maybe. Like I said before, lots of people worked in that house over the years. The Delacroix family spoke highly of you when I interviewed them. They said you were reliable, trustworthy, someone they confided in." Anna leaned forward slightly. That means you would have known about problems in the household, conflicts between family members and employees. Anna turned the crime scene photographs face up, showing Felix the skeletal remains as they had been discovered in the shallow grave. This is how we found Marble buried in plastic sheeting, forgotten in the woods for 5 years, while her sister wondered what happened to her. Felix glanced at the photographs, then looked away quickly. Carmen Duarte was 17 when her sister disappeared. She spent the last 5 years not knowing if Marble was alive or dead, afraid to call police because of her immigration status. Anna's voice hardened, and Belle was working multiple jobs to put Carmen through high school, send money to their mother in Mexico, build a future for her family. Someone took all that away with a single blow to her skull. Felix's hands were shaking visibly now. I didn't want nobody to get hurt. Anna sensed Felix was close to breaking. What do you mean you didn't want anyone to get hurt? Felix caught himself before saying more. I mean, I'm sorry the girl is dead, but I don't know nothing about how it happened. Detective Ray Morrison knocked on the interview room door and gestured for Anna to step outside. She paused the recording and joined Morrison in the hallway. How's it going in there? Morrison asked. He's close to breaking. The physical evidence has him rattled. That's good because we've got a problem. Felix's nephew called looking for him. Said he was supposed to pick up his kids from school and never showed up. Anna felt her frustration rising. I need more time with him. He's about to confess. You've got maybe another hour before his lawyer shows up and shuts down the interview. Make it count. Anna returned to the interview room and restarted the recording. Felix looked even more nervous than before, as if the break had given him time to think about the trouble he was facing. Felix, my supervisor just informed me that your family is looking for you. They're worried because you didn't pick up your kids from school. Felix's eyes widened. My kids they okay? They're fine. Your nephew has them, but this situation is going to affect your whole family if we can't resolve it quickly. Anna sat down across from Felix again. Help me understand what happened to Marble and we can work out an arrangement that protects your family. Felix put his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were filled with tears. You don't understand. If I tell you what really happened, they'll destroy my family, just like they threatened to do 5 years ago. Anna felt adrenaline surge through her system. Felix had just admitted knowing what had really happened to Marble. Who threatened you, Felix? Who's been keeping you quiet all those years? Felix stared at the blood evidence report, his entire body trembling now. I can't. I have children, grandchildren. You don't know what these people are capable of. I know what they're capable of. They murdered an innocent woman and made you help cover it up, but they can't hurt you if they're in prison. Felix was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with a decision he had apparently been avoiding for 5 years. Finally, he looked up at Anna with resignation in his eyes. If I tell you the truth, you have to promise to protect my family. I promise we'll do everything in our power to keep your family safe, but I need you to tell me what happened to Marble Dart on October 15th, 1993. Felix took a deep breath, as if preparing to dive into water too deep to see the bottom. It wasn't Mr. Charles who killed her. Everyone's going to think it was him because of the affair, but it wasn't. Anna's pulse quickened. Who was it? Felix met her eyes, and Anna saw 5 years of guilt and fear in his expression. It was Mrs. Geneva. She found out about the affair and went crazy. She killed that poor girl with her bare hands. Felix's confession hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Anna forced herself to remain calm and professional, even though every instinct told her to press for immediate details. Felix, I need you to tell me exactly what happened on October 15th, 1993. Felix wiped his face with his sleeve and stared at the table for a moment, gathering the courage to revisit the night that had haunted him for 5 years. Mrs. Geneva found a letter in Mr. Charles's jacket pocket that morning. Felix began, his voice barely above a whisper. A love letter from Belle. Real romantic stuff about how much she cared for him and how she hoped they could be together someday. Anna made notes while Felix spoke, careful not to interrupt his flow of memory. I was washing Mr. Charles's car in the driveway when I heard Mrs. Geneva screaming in the house. At first I thought maybe she hurt herself, but then it got violent. Anna sensed there was more to the story than Felix was revealing. Where was Mr. Charles? During this time, he left for his office around noon, said he had meetings all day, and wouldn't be back until late. Mrs. Geneva waited until his car was gone. Then she started pacing around the house like a caged animal. Felix stood up and walked to the corner of the interview room, as if the memories were too painful to face while sitting still. Belle got there in the evening. I wanted to warn her, but Mrs. Geneva told me to keep my mouth shut or she'd call immigration and have me and my whole family deported. My youngest daughter was only 8 years old then. I couldn't risk it. Felix returned to his chair and continued his confession, his voice growing stronger as if sharing the burden was giving him strength. Mrs. Geneva waited until Marble finished cleaning the main floor, then asked her to come to the library to discuss some changes in her work schedule. That's when Mrs. Geneva started screaming again, called Belle a home wrecker, said she was nothing but a gold-digging immigrant who was trying to destroy a good family. Felix's voice cracked as he reached the most difficult part of his story. Mrs. Geneva picked up this heavy brass candlestick from the mantel. At first I thought she was just trying to scare Marble, but then she swung it at her head. Belle tried to duck, but the candlestick caught her right above the ear. Belle fell down and hit her head on the fireplace hearth. There was blood everywhere. Mrs. Geneva just stood there, holding the candlestick, staring at what she'd done, like she couldn't believe it. Felix wiped his eyes and continued. I ran in from the dining room and checked on Marble, but she was already gone. There was nothing I could do to help her. Anna made careful notes about the timeline and location of the murder. What did Mrs. Geneva do then? She told me to take care of it, or she'd make sure my family paid for what happened. Mrs. Geneva made me wrap Marble in plastic sheets from the garage, then load her in the back of my truck. She said we had to take her somewhere far away, where nobody would ever find her. Anna had the confession she needed, but she still required corroborating evidence to support Felix's account and built a case against Geneva Delacroix. The blood under Belle's fingernails would match Geneva's DNA if Felix was telling the truth. But Anna needed more than just biological evidence to ensure a conviction. Felix, I need you to help me prove Geneva killed Marble. Are you willing to testify against her in court? Felix nodded slowly. I've been carrying this secret for 5 years. It's time for that poor girl to get justice and time for Mrs. Geneva to pay for what she did. Anna met with ADA Sarah Wilson to review the evidence package they had assembled against Geneva Delacroix. The combination of Felix's confession, financial records, and medical documentation created a compelling case, but they needed to plan their arrest strategy carefully. Anna arranged for Dr. Kim to expedite the DNA analysis, comparing Geneva's medical records with the blood found under Marble's fingernails. The comparison would require a fresh blood sample from Geneva, which they could obtain during the booking process. If the blood matches, we'll have irrefutable proof that Geneva struggled with Marble during the murder, Dr. Kim explained. Combined with Felix's confession and the financial evidence, it should be enough to secure a conviction. The morning of the arrest, Anna checked her service weapon and handcuffs, then drove toward Beverly Hills knowing she was about to arrest one of the city's most prominent socialites for murder. Geneva Delacroix had spent 5 years believing she had committed the perfect crime, using fear and intimidation to silence the only witness who could implicate her. But blood evidence didn't lie. Financial records couldn't be intimidated, and eventually the truth had been pieced together through careful police work. As Anna parked outside the Beverly Hills Hotel, she thought about Marble Dwart's dreams of bringing her mother to America and opening her own business. Those dreams had been destroyed by a moment of rage from a woman who couldn't accept that her perfect life was built on her husband's lies. But at least now Marble would receive the justice she deserved, and Carmen could finally know what had happened to her beloved sister. The Beverly Hills Hotel's grand ballroom buzzed with polite conversation as Los Angeles' social elite gathered for the Children's Hospital Foundation luncheon. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen. Each centerpiece a carefully arranged bouquet of roses and leaves that cost more than most people earned in a week. Geneva Delacroix sat at the head table resplendent in a navy blue Chanel suit that complemented the sapphire necklace Charles had given her for their 20th wedding anniversary. She smiled graciously at the other board members discussing plans for the foundation's upcoming gala as if she hadn't spent the last 5 years living with the secret of murder. Anna entered through the ballroom's main entrance, her badge displayed prominently on her jacket. The conversations around nearby tables gradually quieted as guests noticed her presence. Police officers at charity luncheons usually meant someone's purse had been stolen from the coat check, not the arrest of a board member for homicide. Anna walked directly to the head table, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Geneva looked up from her conversation with the Foundation president, and for just a moment Anna saw fear flicker across her perfectly composed features. Geneva Delacroix. Anna's voice carried clearly across the now silent ballroom. Yes. Geneva's response was steady, but her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. Anna pulled out her handcuffs and held them discreetly at her side. You're under arrest for the murder of MR.DuckTT. The silence that followed was complete. 300 of Los Angeles' most influential citizens watched in stunned disbelief as one of their own faced charges for killing her housekeeper. Geneva's carefully constructed world crumbled in front of the same people who had admired her charity work and social grace for decades. Geneva's composure finally shattered. She looked around the ballroom at faces she recognized, fellow board members, political donors, social friends who had attended her dinner parties and supported her charitable causes. The weight of their stares seemed to crush her remaining dignity. "This is ridiculous," Geneva said, her voice rising to a pitch that carried across the silent room. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is harassment. My husband will hear about this, and so will everyone else in this city." Anna stepped closer to the table. "Mrs. Della, you can make this easy or difficult, but you're coming with me either way." Geneva stood up abruptly, her chair toppling backward. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have friends in the mayor's office, the police commissioner, the district attorney's office. This arrest will destroy your career." But even as Geneva made her threats, Anna could see the fear in her eyes. The woman who had murdered MR.DuckTT and terrorized Felix Morales into silence was finally facing consequences for her actions. Anna moved behind Geneva and gently placed the handcuffs on her wrists. As Anna recited the Miranda rights, Geneva began to hyperventilate. The reality of her situation was sinking in. Her reputation, built over decades of careful cultivation, was disintegrating in real time. "You don't understand," Geneva said, her voice cracking. "It was an accident. The girl attacked me first. I was defending myself in my own home." Anna continued the arrest procedure while Geneva spoke, noting that the suspect was already changing her story from complete denial to claims of self-defense. "She was trying to destroy my marriage, my family. She seduced my husband and then had the nerve to tell me she deserved to be treated with respect. I just wanted her to leave us alone." The ballroom crowd listened in fascination as Geneva provided a partial confession to the crime, unaware that her words were being recorded by Anna's concealed microphone. Anna guided Geneva toward the ballroom exit while hotel security cleared a path through the crowd of onlookers. Camera phones appeared as guests began documenting the arrest of one of their most prominent members. "This will ruin everything," Geneva whispered as they walked. Anna felt no sympathy for Geneva's concerns about her reputation. "You should have thought about that before you murdered an innocent woman and buried her in the woods." Charles Delacroix arrived at the police station 2 hours after his wife's arrest, accompanied by the most expensive criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles. Anna watched through the interrogation room window as Charles spoke with Geneva for the first time since learning the truth about Marble's death. The reunion was not what Anna had expected. Instead of offering support and comfort, Charles sat across from Geneva with an expression of horror and disbelief. Their conversation, while private, was clearly emotional and heated. When Charles emerged from the room 20 minutes later, his face was pale and his hands were shaking. He approached Anna in the hallway outside the interview rooms. "Is it true? Did she really kill Umbel?" Anna studied Charles's expression, seeing genuine shock in his eyes. "We have substantial evidence that your wife murdered MR.DuckTT on October 15, 1993, and forced Felix Morales to help her dispose of the body." Charles leaned against the wall as if his legs could no longer support his weight. "I thought Marble had just disappeared. I spent weeks wondering if she was safe, if she'd found work somewhere else, if she'd gone back to Mexico." Charles closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. Anna could see the genuine anguish in Charles's reaction. Whatever his faults as a husband, he hadn't been involved in Marble's murder or the subsequent cover-up. "Mr. Delacroix, your wife is going to need significant legal help. Are you prepared to support her through this process?" Charles looked toward the interview room where Geneva was meeting with her attorney. "I don't know if I can. Every time I look at her, I'm going to think about what she did to that poor girl. How do I live with someone who's capable of murder?" Dr. Kim called Anna, 3 days later with the results of the DNA comparison. The DNA match is conclusive. Dr. Kim reported the blood under the victim's fingernails belongs to Geneva Delqua. There's no possibility of lab error or contamination. The DNA evidence eliminated any remaining doubt about Geneva's guilt. Combined with Felix's confession, the financial records, and the medical documentation, the prosecution had built an overwhelming case against the woman who had killed MR.DuckTT. The trial began a month after Geneva's arrest, drawing significant media attention due to the dramatic circumstances of the case. The prosecution presented their evidence methodically, starting with the discovery of Marble's remains and building toward Felix's confession and the corroborating physical evidence. Carmen testified about her sister's life and dreams, describing how Marble had worked multiple jobs to support her family and pay for Carmen's education. Her testimony was emotional but controlled, painting a vivid picture of the life Geneva had destroyed. "My sister wanted to bring our mother from Mexico and open a small restaurant," Carmen told the jury. "She was taking English classes at night and saving every dollar she could. She talked about buying a house someday where our whole family could live together." Carmen's voice broke as she described the 5 years of not knowing whether Marble was alive or dead. Felix's testimony was the emotional centerpiece of the trial. He described in detail how Geneva had murdered Marble in a rage over the affair, then forced him to help dispose of the body using threats against his family. "She told me that if I ever spoke about what happened, she would make sure my children and grandchildren suffered," Felix said, tears streaming down his face. "I was scared for 5 years, but I couldn't live with staying quiet while that poor girl's family wondered what happened to her." The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours before returning a guilty verdict on charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy to conceal a crime. Geneva showed no emotion as the verdict was read, but observers noted that her hands were shaking. Judge Williams sentenced Geneva to life in prison without the possibility of parole, noting the premeditated nature of the cover-up and the extreme callousness Geneva had shown toward the victim's family. The defendant not only committed murder, but spent 5 years watching the victim's family suffer while concealing her involvement in the crime. This level of calculated deception demonstrates a complete lack of remorse or human compassion. Felix Morales received a 5-year suspended sentence in exchange for his cooperation with the prosecution. Judge Williams noted that while Felix's actions in helping to conceal the crime were serious, his eventual decision to tell the truth had been crucial to achieving justice for Maribel. 3 weeks after Geneva's sentencing, Anna and Carmen stood together at Marble's grave in Resurrection Cemetery. The headstone was simple black granite engraved with Marble's name, dates of birth and death, and the words "beloved sister" and "daughter" in both English and Spanish. "I keep thinking about all the things she missed," Carmen said, kneeling to arrange the flowers around the headstone. "She never saw me graduate from college. We'll never get to bring our mother to live in America like she planned." Anna stood quietly while Carmen spoke to her sister's grave, sharing updates about family news and expressing the love she had never stopped feeling despite 5 years of uncertainty. "I'm sorry it took so long to find out what happened to you," Carmen whispered. "I should have pushed harder, asked more questions, called the police, even though I was scared." Anna knelt beside Carmen and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your sister wouldn't want you to blame yourself. She would want you to live the life she was working so hard to make possible." Carmen wiped tears from her face and stood up, taking a final look at the grave. "Do you think she can rest in peace now that her killer is in prison?" Anna considered the question carefully. "I think she would be proud of how you fought to get her justice." As they walked back toward the cemetery entrance, Carmen asked Anna about other unsolved cases involving missing immigrants and marginalized people. "There are too many," Anna admitted. "People who disappear without anyone filing reports, cases that don't get the attention they deserve because the victims don't have powerful families or political connections." Carmen stopped walking and turned to face Anna. "Maybe that needs to change. Maybe there should be someone specifically looking out for people like my sister. People who don't have voices in the system. That sounds like important work." Anna said, "Your sister would be proud if you decided to pursue something like that." Carmen smiled for the first time since Anna had met her. She always said I was smarter than her, that I should use my education to help people. Maybe this is what she meant. After leaving the cemetery, Anna pulled into the police station parking lot and sat in her car for a moment, reflecting on the case that had consumed 6 months of her life. The investigation had taken her from a shallow grave in Griffith Park to the highest levels of Los Angeles societies, revealing that money and influence couldn't ultimately protect someone from the consequences of their actions. Geneva's pain had been real even if her response had been unforgivable, but understanding the motive didn't diminish the crime. Whatever Geneva had suffered, it didn't justify taking a life. Marble Duarte could finally rest in peace knowing that her death had not been forgotten. Justice had been served even if it had taken 5 years to arrive.